All right. Thank you. Hello. Good morning. And thank you, Jess, for being here today on Mighty Monday with me, the host, Maggie. um, and today, just a quick introduction. So, there's I was looking at your website, according to Jess. You do a lot,
Mhm.
and I'm also very jealous of everything that you do, which it's so cool. So it seems like you got a degree in journalism, and then I mean, I'm probably missing a lot. And then you went to South Africa to do some work studying wildlife filmmaking, becoming a nature
Mhm.
guide, just beginning a total wildlife journey. And I think you work at a global nature conservation organization. And it just really seems like you're the definition of someone who's dedicated to sustainability and wildlife and just being a friend to the earth. And so I kind of wanted to start with wildlife filmmaking. And I wanted to know, what was one project that you worked on that changed maybe your view of the world or that subject in some way?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for that intro. I think when you kind of that does make my life sound very excited. And yeah, I have done. I think yeah, I kind of. So many people say when you say how did you get into working in nature and conservation and with wildlife, and I think so many people's answer is kind of, oh, when I was really young, like I was always outside, loved animals and was always with nature. And that wasn't really, I always wanted to work in fashion, or always since I was really young. So even though I still appreciated nature, that I never kind of envisioned this path, I guess. So yeah, I did my degree, and I knew that I didn't want to work in kind of mainstream journalism and wanted to write stories and just be a scholar, but in a way that made like a lasting impact. And during, I think it was my second year of university, I went and I did some volunteering at a place in South Africa that was kind of typical what a lot of people were doing at that time. That was just to just help on like a conservation reserve, and that was great. And I think it was kind of my first intro into this, really exciting. And once I finished a degree, and I was working in retail for a bit, but I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I went to a wildlife film school. It was just kind of a short course in South Africa, but it was incredible. We learned everything from kind of scripting and storyboarding to filming, and there was even kind of classes on 3D filming, which at the time was just so incredible and really opened my eyes to how that's even done, which is really interesting in itself. And
Yeah.
at the end of that course, I think it was the last day or the second to last day, the course director said that he was going to work on as part of a small film crew in South Africa, and they needed a second camera person. And he asked me a second, was kind of from the day that I got back from that trip, I was back out there, I think less than 3 weeks later. And we were filming a documentary, like ethical and responsible volunteer programs. And that has been really influential. That something that happened in that trip actually is what started really my blog and the whole kind of According to Jess brand, because it was within that trip that we were interviewing a well-known conservationist, and she told us about a place that was, I think it was on our way to the next volunteer kind of facility that we were going to, but it was one of those kind of petting zoo places where you kind of go in and there's all kind of cub-petting activities and all things like that. But she said the animals are in terrible conditions, it's really not good, and so many tourists go to these places and they think this is a really nice and fun thing to do, and they just want to get a load of photos for social media essentially. And that's obviously completely not true. And I think I had some awareness, but I didn't really know hugely. So it all kind of happened quite, I think we were interviewing her, and then I think we interviewed her in the morning and we were going there in the afternoon. So it was the same day. There wasn't much prep and kind of production prep wise. There was kind of nothing. That they just said, we're going to this place and this is kind of all we have free within the rest of our production schedule. So I went in with our presenter, kind of like undercover kind of thing, as we weren't saying that we were filming or anything like that. And yeah, we just kind of pretended to be tourists there. So the presenter, she was South African, and so she was pretending that I was visiting from the UK and wanted to see a lion up close and all that kind of thing. So they took us around, and we were kind of filming different bits, but it was really upsetting. So many lion cubs that I remember they had 3-week-old lion cubs with kind of chunks of their fur missing, and they looked so skinny, and they were kind of in just like a concrete box almost, with like, there was like a tire on the floor and some straw, and that was it. And I remember saying to the guy, like, oh, where's the cub's mother? And he was like, oh, I don't know, like over there somewhere. And it was really like not even going to hide anything. Obviously, all of this stuff is completely legal. And they had a lion, I think it was a 7-month-old lion cub in the same enclosure as it was a 9-month-old hyena cub. And in the wild, lions don't get along at all. So it was interesting, they were in there together, and I asked and said, oh, how come you've put them together? And he was like, oh, just to see if they'll be friends, and we'll just see what happens. And I think, but they're not going to be friends, and now they're relatively small, but they get bigger, and it just felt really wrong. But there was also something about kind of the way that it was just so open and so many people go there. So we came out of there after about, I think it was about an hour and a half of being taken around, and I was just really affected by that. And I remember feeling really angry, upset, wanting to really do something. And even when this documentary came out, it was because of production times and stuff, everything takes a long time. I was like, I need to do something now. So I remember I took a screenshot of some of the footage, which was of me, and there was in one of the enclosures, it was one larger ones, but obviously still tiny. There was kind of this podium thing, and there was, I think, about 12 lions on it, and I think they were about 10 months old, but for a lion, that's still big. When they're 10 months old, they're pretty big still. And there was one just behind me, and I turned the camera around, and the lion actually put its paw on my shoulder. And so it was like a good, in terms of taking photo to engage people, it was good. So I took that screenshot, I put it on I think just my Facebook page, and just kind of I think the caption was something like today in South Africa or something. So it was really kind of no detail or anything, and I left it up for, I think it was 48 hours, just to see kind of the reaction, because I knew that people would say, wow, like that's incredible, and I want to go and do that, and things like that. And then it was 48 hours after that, I released a blog article called The Truth Behind My Lion Selfie. And it was because a lot of people don't know that when you are going to these kind of cub petting places, essentially what you're doing is making the lions, let's say this is for a lot, but we'll use the example of lions as that was in the blog article, but the lion is then losing its like instinctual fear of humans, because when you're petting it from such a young age, from when they're just a few weeks old and all the way up to as they kind of grow bigger. And in these facilities, once they then they do these activities called walking with lions, where you're essentially walking along with them, and that still is kind of they're losing all of their natural instinct of humans. And then from there go to these like canned hunting facilities, which is basically where they will be shot. Those lions will be shot trophies, but it is slightly different from trophy hunting, because it means that the people who are shooting those lions, they don't even need to know really how to shoot, because those lions won't kind of run away from humans, and sometimes they'll even have kind of meat and things like put out for that lion, so they'll know exactly the place to go for you to then shoot the lion and have that as a trophy. And I think so many people, and this is obviously a few years ago as well, I think more people are aware of it now, but at that time, no one kind of knew. I didn't know really to that extent. And I just thought if I can stop kind of 5 people going to these places, that would be a good thing. And amazingly, that article went viral, and I think in the end just 400,000 people read it, which was great, and from people from all over the world. And I remember one email that I got that really stuck out was an email from a travel agency in Canada saying that they had no idea that that was what happened at these places, and so because of that they were going to stop sending any of their tourists there, which is really great. So I think, yeah, that kind of really sparked, that was kind of the founding story of according to Jess, really. Yeah, so that's definitely standout moment. Sorry, that was a long answer to your question.
No, well, no, it's a great story. And also, I love to hear that it just sounds like a lot of what's going on is just people are just ignorant of what's going on. They don't understand, like, they want to go volunteer and they don't understand that these volunteer programs actually aren't as, helpful as they think, or people are going and being tourists. They don't, and they're like, oh, this isn't, I'm in South Africa, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But then they don't realize the animals are being mistreated. So I think it's really great that your brand has worked on getting that message out there. And also, I really like the aesthetic of your brand. I feel like it's very, like, it's not like fact, like this is fact kind of like government feeling, where some people are more like, oh, like it's more like I'm a friend and I've been through this and I just want to let you know this is what I learned. Which I think is a really great way to convey the message.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said that, because that is exactly what I wanted to be. I've always wanted to approachable blog and brand and voice, because I have always found that, I mean, there's so many different kind of organizations and people with different brands out there and things, and everyone obviously has their own style. But I've always found that when people use that kind of like aggressive tone, it doesn't work. And when it's kind of like, even people have to these places and they in those questions and they just kind of believed it and they just wanted to get photos for their social media or something. I believe that if people knew the truth, they wouldn't do that, or they wouldn't do that again. So I think there's no point in kind of making people feel bad for something that they did in the past, but rather kind of just educate them and say, hey, we're all learning here, and just kind of using that education in like a friendly way, rather than kind of making people feel bad for doing something. And often the reaction to that then is people get defensive as well, and then I think you're just not going to kind of cut through with your message and the story that you want to tell. So
right, you push them the other way, and then it's just worse. And so you mentioned a lot that in this place that you filmed in, there's like a lot of cubs and lion cubs. And in your blog, you said that you worked with the last wild white lions in the Timbavati. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Was that inspired by this? And what was it like to work with these animals? And how is that conservation effort going?
Yeah, so that opportunity actually came up because of that article, which was incredible. So I remember being on holiday. I think I was in Italy actually in the summer, and normally on holiday don't check work emails or anything like that, and for some reason I thought, oh, I'll just have a look. Sometimes you just get kind of an instinct to check, and it was an organization with those white lions, and they said that they had found my article and they to come and help them out with different things. Strangely enough, actually, I think that I was originally going to go to help them with their kind of social media and storytelling things, but once I got there, I think they have 3 different reserves, because they're trying to build kind of 3 different prides of those white lions, and they needed a volunteer program manager. So in the end, I actually did that, which was a different thing that I thought I was going out there for, but worked out really well in the end, because I got to meet so many different volunteers from all over the world, and it was a really good program. So and interesting about those white lions as well, because a lot of people think that a white lion is, they either have never heard of it or don't think it's real, or they think it's like an albino lion. That's what they think it is, but it's just that because they are rare, I think, kind of back decades ago, where there weren't a lot of laws around kind of shooting lions and things, because they're so really laid out through that way. I think is there weren't that many of them to start with anyway, because because they're part of they're still all lions. If a white lion and a standard kind of tawny lion breed together, you don't know if the cubs are going to be tawny or white, or they could be like a pride of, say, a litter of 4 lion cubs, and they could be 2 white and 2 tawny or and things like that. So it's hard to bring that subspecies kind of back as well. But
well, it's amazing that you had the opportunity to like work with them, and then you thought you were going to be doing social media, and then actually you ended up coordinating this entire volunteer program. And I think also a good, connecting with conservation is sustainability and the environment. And I saw you spoke to Joanna Trewern. I don't know if that's saying that right. And she has a PhD in sustainability, and it is explaining how food companies are helping consumers change behaviors to become more sustainable in their diets. And you talked about what it would get people to seriously change their behaviors towards food. So my question is just that, like, how will we get people to change their diets to save, our beautiful earth and these, species and animals and things like that?
Yeah, talking to Jo so she, to a bit of context, she's one of my close friends, and we just happened to be interested a lot of the same things. And yeah, she's nearly at the end of her PhD now, and before that she was working in the science of behavior change and through kind of sustainable diets and things like that. So she is, an incredible person and very knowledgeable. And I kind of had my own thoughts and ideas, and just talking to her kind of really, I think, brought up a lot of different questions. I think everything, the word of sustainability and conservation and even nature, everything is so complex, and there's so many layers and levels to everything. And I've definitely found through my kind of social media, according to Jess, that people will ask me a question and they want kind of a straightforward answer, almost like is this good or bad, or is this accurate? So often just not like that, because there's so many to it, there's so many complexities to it. But in terms of what it will take for people to change their behavior towards food, and I spoke to her specifically around my kind of insects as a food source project. It's a hard question to answer, but I think the main things are kind of the different things to it. I think there's no kind of one answer, but there's a lot of different things that would kind of answer that question, but they all need to be done together, if that makes sense. So food is such an emotional kind of thing. It's a choice that we make every day of what we're going to have for breakfast, if we're even going to have breakfast that day, and the same for kind of every meal and snack and everything that we have. And even though we don't really sometimes think it, or it's done kind of more subconsciously, we are making those decisions, and a lot of the time it is kind of based on our emotions. That maybe if we're feeling, I don't know, a bit tired or something, we might instinctively go towards something that has more sugar in it, or it's not something that we're thinking, oh, I'm feeling tired, so I'm going to go towards this. It's almost like an automatic reaction. So I think and it's also something that's really ingrained in all of us. So what a lot of people kind of eat as kind of their main standard kind of collection of, say, their 10 meals that they will always go back to and make, say, once a week, is kind of a factor of the people that are all around them. So often the type of food that you eat will be the same as what your family eat, or your friends eat, or even your kind of colleagues at work, if you're all eating together area where you're living, and like acceptable in the society that you live in and culture and all things like that. There's so many different kind of factors that all feed into that.
Right.
So I think, yeah, it's the main kind of eating approach as well is that I'm there's so many benefits to eat insects, as I'm sure you probably know, and for our health and the health of our planet as well. But there's also so many, I think in the Western world, it would be a huge change. And so many people think like, no way, like we as humans are not meant to eat insects, but actually that's not true at all. Like 2 billion people in the world currently eat insects almost every day, or like as part of their kind of normal diet, and that's what they always have done, and it's as normal as if we were to eat chicken or potato. It's kind of an idea that's been put in our mind in certain countries and in certain cultures that we're not meant to eat insects, and actually that's not true at all. And the thing that a kind of tactic, I guess, that I've been trying to use a lot, which has had a lot of really interesting results, is that when people kind of comment on my posts about eating insects, or about kind of different foods that can have insects in or anything like that, and they say, oh, like no way, I wouldn't eat that, and I just ask them why. And not, I think that kind of tactic, which again Joe told me is apparently a tactic called layering. Every response that you're given, you just ask why, and it's kind of like digging deeper into and helping the person who's asking the question to almost understand why they think a certain way. And I think this is kind of going back to as well the whole tactic of telling people what they should or shouldn't do doesn't work so much, but you kind of want people to like reach their own conclusion in a kind of educated way through kind of consuming this different content about what is true and what's not. These different questions are saying like, why do you think that? Why wouldn't you eat sex? And they were kind of saying different answers, but then themselves, I think, realized actually there isn't really a reason. And it's just, if you can't give a reason why you're doing a certain thing, then why are you doing it? Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of people, when I said, oh, like, you eat insects, why wouldn't you consider it? And you know, if you have, because a lot of people as well, if they see some sort of food and they haven't tried it before, but they often will say, oh, I'll try it and give it a go. But a lot of the time with insects, people are just like, oh no, like I won't try it. Just asking, well, yeah, kind of why. And a lot of people are, oh, because insects, aren't they, like they're covered in mud and soil and out of the ground. And I say, but that isn't how we would keep insects as food for like human consumption, and that isn't the way that you, if you eat chicken, say, you don't go and physically pick up a chicken from the wild and eat it, you know. People don't kind of make that comparison, but it's obviously a relatively new concept in kind of the Western world. So it's just, I think, breaking down all of those kind of preconceived ideas of what eating insects would be, and actually showing that it's not that at all. And you know, there's so many insects that are hidden in so many of the foods that we eat already. Chances are a lot of people are already eating insects and don't know it, and they're just not getting those nutritional benefits that we would if we were consuming them as a real kind of food source. So that's interesting. Exactly. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it did. I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, like you said, insects are super healthy and sustainable, but it's really hard to get past those preconceived biases. But there's really, you can't convince somebody's mind. They have to convince themselves. So I like that tactic of asking, oh, why do you feel this way? And I think it's really interesting when you're talking to somebody and you can see like in the middle of a conversation them reflect on like, why do I think this? You know, they've kind of just thought that way. But
exactly.
Yeah. Wow. I think that was a great, because that's a great way, I think, to leave off, because it's so perfect and fits in with what Mighty Cricket is trying to do. We're really trying to turn around these biases against bugs, especially in Western culture. And it's good to know that we have, according to Jess, on our team helping us out too. So yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I thought everything you said was so amazing, and what you're doing, I admire and respect so much. And just thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this conversation. I think it's so important. And I think the more that we talk about all of this kind of stuff, and especially kind of food and sustainability and eating insects, the more people will, come to kind of, move on to our side of eating
Exactly.
insects.
Exactly. We're all on one side together. Just some people, just need to relax.
Yeah.
Awesome.